Hi, this is Julia with Livewire Libraries, and today, as part of the Made Digital project, I'm going to show you how to use a cool online tool called Twine. Twine is an open source tool for telling interactive nonlinear stories, and today I'm going to show you how to use Twine to write a choose your own adventure story. Some of my favorite stories growing up were choose your own adventure because I loved reading the story and then realizing that I was in control of what happened, that I could make choices as the story went along, and the choices that I made determined what actions the main characters took and also what the outcome was, what happened to the plot along the way and how the story ended. So what you're seeing here on the screen is a story that I wrote earlier with the main protagonist. Her name is Goldilocks, and she's walking through the woods, and the reader is reading what's happening to her and making decisions along the way. And based on what decisions the reader selects, based on what choices the reader selects, different things happen to Goldilocks, and she encounters different scenery based on the choices that the reader has made. Right. So to access Twine, what you can do is run a search in Google. So you go to Google and you search for Twinery, Twinery. Or what you could just do is navigate your browser to Twinery, Twinery.org, and that'll take you to the Twine website. And then when you get to the Twine website, on the right hand side, it'll say download for Windows or Mac or Linux, or you can use it online. I'm going to left click on the use it online hyperlink there, and that will mean that I can use my web browser to create a new story. You can see here I've got 0 stories created on my web browser, but if I go to the right hand side, there's a green button there called plus story. If you left click on that, it'll create a story. At the pop-up, you want to give your story a name. So I'm going to call mine Goldilocks in the forest, and then I'm going to left click on the green add button, and that'll add my story Goldilocks in the forest to the screen. Now you can see in the middle of the screen, it's started with an untitled passage, and it says double click on this passage to edit it. So I'm just going to left double click on the passage, and it'll open up a screen where I can edit that passage. And that's my starting passage for the story. So here it's brought up the untitled passage. And so I'm just going to type the introductory sentence or paragraph of my story. Now here it's important, we've got to have the reader make a decision at the bottom of the page. The double brackets is one of the decisions that the reader can choose. So the double brackets on either side of the option find some shade to rest means that that's an option that the user can choose. And then the double brackets on either side of continue walking until she finds a house signifies that that's another choice that the reader can make. And so I'm just going to go up to the top right hand corner and exit out of the untitled passage. Just left click on that. And it'll take me back to the screen which shows me my choices. So I've got my starting phrase, and then I've got my two choices, which is find some shade to rest or continue walking until she finds a house. So I got my first passage and then a decision that the reader needs to make to decide whether Goldilocks finds some shade to rest or to continue walking until Goldilocks finds a house. If I want to see what that's going to look like to the reader, I just come down to the bottom right-hand corner and I left click once on the play button. And by left clicking on the play button, it takes my browser to the story. So that's my first paragraph in the story that starts my story. And then it shows that the reader has two choices, two hyperlinks. I've not written the rest of my story, so I just hit the back button to go to the other links. So they'll show you the two links of the choices. But of course, when you click on it, there's nothing written there because I haven't written that part of the story yet. So then I just X out of that tab on the browser to go back to my map. And then I left double click on the find some shade to rest so I can type in something interesting there for what happens when the reader chooses for Goldilocks to find some shade to rest. And again, it's important at the end of this passage to give the reader a choice. So double brackets at the beginning and end of a choice that the reader can make. I give them two choices, one of two choices that they can make. And then you can see it's updated my map. And so I'm just going to continue on, and I'm going to continue to write the choices in my story. So every branch, every fork, every decision will need to have the story added to that point to move it forward based on whatever the reader chose. And you can see I can go back and forth between my map and writing my story, writing the choices in my story. And just to note, you don't need to just have two choices, but obviously the more choices that you give the reader, the more complicated your story is going to get, and the more offshoots and forks you're going to have to write for your reader based on what they've chosen. So you need at least two choices. You need to give your reader at least two choices, but you can give them more than that. If you want to make 3 or 4 choices, you can give them more than 2 choices. Okay, so I've created quite a few decisions on the decision map. I've given the reader quite a few alternative choices based on what they've chosen in the story. I haven't completely filled it out. You could spend hours and hours creating a choose your own adventure story this way. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give it a little test to make sure it works. Very importantly, though, we want to make sure in between testing rounds that we save our changes. Currently the story is in our browser, but we haven't actually saved it, so we're going to want to save the story. So in order to save my story in the mapping area, I'm going to go down to the bottom left hand corner where I see the title of my story, Goldilocks in the Forest. And in the right hand side of the title, Goldilocks in the Forest, I'll see an arrow. I'll left click on that arrow, and then in the pop-up menu that appears when I left click on the arrow, I'm going to choose the bottom selection, which is publish to file. And that will download the file, HTML file, Goldilocks in the Forest. And so that's gone into my download files on my laptop. And so now I've saved the file to my laptop. I know it is quite truly saved, not just in the browser. And what I can do with it is I can either save the file on the laptop, I can move it onto a memory stick, or I can email it to myself on another computer. And in that way I can actually save my story, and I can make sure that when I close my browser I don't accidentally lose my story. And so now I'm just going to test out my story. So I'm just going to choose some options and make sure that the story actually works, that the reader, upon reading it and clicking on a selection, clicking on a choice, that it actually navigates them correctly to the next page in the story. And here you see I can hit the back button to navigate to an earlier branch in the story, just to make sure that all of my links are working correctly. I can hit the back and forward button as they appear on the left hand side of my story, and then just test that all the links are working. Well, thank you for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed learning about the Twine tool and how you can use it to write a story, and specifically how to write a choose your own adventure story. I hope you have fun using the tool to write your own choose your own adventure story. Share in the comments below if you do use the Twine tool at twinery.org to write your own choose your own adventure story. And I look forward to seeing you next week for more Made Digital.